Hi, this is Coach Chuck of the National Free Flight Society Youth Development Program. I'm joined today by Coach Brian in Michigan. And today's video, we will cover a build project for a P-18 class airplane. P-18 is a provisional class of AMA competition. And this particular plane uh, happens to be a very similar size of a lot of Science Olympiad planes in that it's an 18-inch wingspan and weighs 7.5 grams. So it's very similar to Science Olympiad build, but it's qualified to compete in a lot of AMA contests. We will be building this plane from this kit. It's the first derivative kit from Laser Cut Planes. You can find that online easily. I'll put a link in the information on the video. This build will take about 3 hours, and the intent of this video is that you build along with the video, or you can watch it, take notes, and build later. This was done as a live build on June 14th of 2021 with a group of students from Michigan Science Olympiad, and we would like to acknowledge the help of the Michigan Science Olympiad organization in providing the kits for these students to build along with us. As a build along video that was taped live, this video will not be as polished as some of our videos, but it will provide a good build along experience for you as a student or a coach. So with that, let's go ahead and jump right into the building. We will be showing side by side my billboard as well as Brian's billboard in the spotlight of the video. And I believe the video will only show those building boards as the spotlight. So with that, we will move right into the build process.
All right, I think we'll get started. Brian, if you could keep your eye out for anybody else trying to enter and go ahead and admit them.
Yep.
We'll get started. So I want to welcome everybody. We're going to do a P-18 build demonstration. A P-18 is a class of flying that the AMA and National Free Flight Society host at some of their competitions, and it happens to be very similar to the size and weight plane that you will have for Science Olympiad most years. So it's a good introduction to building. It's got very good instructions. Hopefully you'll get a few tips from us on ways we do things that might differ a little from the instructions, or might highlight some really good parts of the instructions. This is part of a new partnership between the National Free Flight Society, or NFFS, and Science Olympiad National. The partnership focuses on education, like this presentation, and mentorship. Both Coach Brian and myself, Coach Chuck, have a lot of experience coaching our teams, and a lot of time spent on the forums on Science Olympiad helping people out. Want to give a special shout out to Paul Voitinov. He's the Michigan Science Olympiad president. He's the one that suggested this build session, set it up, and got kits to most of the students that were interested in Michigan. This plane is designed and sold by Laser Cut Planes. They also make kits annually for Science Olympiad. It's a very simple kit. I've had my kids build this as a follow-on to Science Olympiad, and some of my kids that had not had Science Olympiad yet. So it's a very straightforward kit. If you've built Right Stuff in the past, you'll find this very simple, maybe too simple. But we should get it done in the session today. And one difference from Science Olympiad is it does require an unmodified plastic commercial prop. And that might be the prop that comes in the kit, which is rather heavy, but it's a good prop. I know John, when he designed the kits, tried to select a good prop from the ones that were available of this style. You can also replace that with an Ikera prop, which you might be more familiar with in some of the Science Olympiad kits. This is a lot lighter. You'll reach your weight a lot easier with this prop than with the heavier plastic one, but you'll have to make some changes. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping for this Zoom session. Please keep your audio muted unless you're specifically asking a question so that we don't get any feedback from any of the individual stations. You can ask questions through the chat, or if you don't get our attention because we're focused too much on the airplanes, go ahead and unmute and get our attention verbally and ask your question. If you are building along with us, if you have a specific question about your build, it would help to turn on your video and show us your issue in your build, and we can zoom in on that and take a look. Let's see. We've set our billboards to spotlight. That means, our billboards, Brian and I, that means they should show up on your computer. If you're using a laptop, they'll be side by side on the computer. If you're using a phone, then whichever one of us is talking, our billboard will highlight. You can also pin that if you're more interested in one of our billboards over the other one. So we already covered entering your name and school name into the chat. We are recording this presentation, and we'll make it available. We'll send you a link after the demonstration is over in case you want to go back and review any of the parts of this. A couple of things coming up after this presentation. The first one is July 21st in Pontiac, Michigan at the soccer facility is the NFFS and AMA Nationals. We are going to have a Science Olympiad Day there on the 21st. The Nationals actually go the 20th through the 23rd. In the morning from 7 to 9 a.m., I know that's early, we'll have demonstrations by myself and Coach Brian. And we'll be looking at some of the more advanced building techniques that you might find useful in Science Olympiad. And then we'll have 3 or 4 hours for elastic launch glider and 3 or 4 hours for right stuff. And we're going to include P-18. So if you have this year's right stuff planes, you can come individually or as a team of 2 and fly those. Or if you built a P-18, you can fly that in a competition environment. And the competition differs a little bit from Science Olympiad in that you'll have 3 to 4 hours to put in 6 official flights, and your time for the rubber powered, your placing will be determined by your best of your 6 flights. In glider, you'll get 9 official flights, and your score is your sum of your best 2 flights. So it's a good chance to get to fly your Science Olympiad planes and this P-18 in a more relaxed environment. It's still competitive. Coach Brian, myself, I believe Coach Jimmy Jordan, who's on with us today, and who else is going to be there? Tom Sanders, the event supervisor from Nationals, plans to be there. And we'll all be available to help you out while you're flying. So that's another benefit to being there. We'll focus on right stuff since both classes will have right stuff, but some people have requested information on build topics on elastic launch glider too. So we'll have a few demonstrations in that area as well. And while you're there, you'll be able to see world-class indoor airplane flying, planes that are considerably larger and lighter than what we're going to build here today. The registration is limited. I think you've all gotten a link. If you don't, we can follow up afterwards with a link. It's $50 per team, and that covers the cost of the room, some prize bags, and so forth. And it's a per team registration. And I believe we've got about half of the slots filled at this time. So again, that'll be July 21st in Pontiac, Michigan at the indoor soccer facilities. And it looks to be a very good opportunity. Brief introduction. My name is Coach Chuck Andraka. I am the coach for the flying events of the Albuquerque area homeschoolers Science Olympiad team. We are the Division C winner the last two in-person nationals, and we've been in top 5 the last 2 nationals in mid-school or Division B. I'm also the junior team manager for the U.S. junior team for indoor flying. We'll be competing in Romania later this year with 3 of my students from Science Olympiad, as well as Andrew Welter, who came in 2nd place at nationals in New York. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. So some of the schools may know me because you've seen me at competitions in Michigan. I've been coaching Science Olympiad since 2013. I coach 4 high schools, just the flying events. That's Holt, East Lansing, Hazlitt, and Okemos. And for the last 2 in-person state championships, 3 of my 4 teams have finished 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's it with helicopter in 18 and Right Stuff in 2019. So we take a very comprehensive approach and have a lot of fun with it. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. All right, so today's process, we're going to build mostly to the plan. He has a very comprehensive plan book here. We have a few deviations, and we'll point those out, a few reinforcements of what he's doing and why he's doing it. You can build along, or you can take notes and build later. It looks like it's maybe half and half among the students that have signed in so far. We're going to try and pace this for average student participation. Now, we've got high school and we've got mid-school. Some of you may fall behind. Unfortunately, because of the time constraints, we're not going to wait till everybody catches up. We're going to try and give sufficient time. If we're going way too fast for you, let us know, and we'll try and slow down, but we do need to keep on a schedule for this. Like I said, we will have the video available later. If you get behind and we move on to a new area, try and set the structure you're working on aside. You can come back to it later. In some cases, if the next step is covering and you haven't finished building the structure, that may not be possible, but maybe you've got one wing panel framed up and ready to cover when we have both of ours, and you can go ahead and cover that one wing panel and come back and do the other one on your own time later. We'll try to be flexible during that. We don't have video for everybody. So if you do fall behind and want us to pause for a second or have a question, just pipe in and let us know. Little about the build methods. I'll be building with thin CA. I like the Zap CA. It seems to last longer in the bottle. A lot of people use Bob Smith CA. It's sold under a number of local hobby shop labels. Typically, it's either a blue label for thin and a purple label for medium or gap filling. Brian will be building with medium CA. I'm not sure. I think he uses the Bob Smith.
I have gap also.
Oh, okay.
Or Zappa gap.
The reason I prefer the thin is because it's going to build lighter. The unfortunate side of thin CA is it won't fill a gap at all, whereas the medium, it's actually called Zappa gap. because it will bridge a gap to some extent. But glue is heavy. And so if you're bridging the gap with glue, it's also brittle once it dries. You don't have as strong a joint as if you had a good joint to begin with and use thin CA. Now I will be applying my thin CA with a capillary applicator. This is a stick, about a 1/4 inch square stick, and maybe 3 or 4 inches long. And I've stuck 2 pins through it, and I have the tips of the pins coming almost to touching each other. And I will use a lid from this is from green chili, but sour cream lid, anything like this, or a scrap of wax paper. I'll put a drop of CA on there, and then I'll use the applicator to apply the CA. This picks up maybe a 1/4 of a drop of CA. Brian will be doing something similar with the gap filling. He'll put some on a piece of wax paper or a lid or something, and then he'll use a toothpick to apply it. This controls the amount of glue you're getting to the joint. You really don't want to spray glue directly from the bottle. You'll end up being overweight in a hurry. Glue is one of the heaviest areas on these planes.
I could add a little thing we've done analyzing glue there. A drop of glue from a capillary tool is about 3 milligrams, so 3/1000ths of a gram. And there's about 50 glue joints on this airplane if you count the long joints as multiple joints. So if you put 1 extra drop of glue on every joint, even from the capillary tool, you've added 2% to the total airplane weight. So a drop from a bottle is like 10 drops from a capillary tool. So you can see you're adding like 10 to 15% to the weight of the airplane. So glue is critical.
Okay. One other option you have for glue, and you might want to consider it as you go on to more advanced builds, would be what we call Duco. It's also Ambroid is similar. It's a nitrocellulose-based glue. This is available from Amazon. I think you can also get it at Ace Hardware. And we don't use this full strength. We cut it 50-50 with acetone as a thinner. And then my team uses a little applicator bottle. This glue is already mostly thinner, and then we're cutting it 50-50. So when you put a drop of glue on it, most of it evaporates. So that's one way to save weight when you start getting into planes that are less than 3 grams, whereas we're building to about 7 or 8 grams today. So we'll be using CA. As you get your plane out of the bag, first thing you want to do is take your covering and just set it aside. Don't unfold that at this point, because we're going to show you a technique for cutting it prior to unfolding it. It gets unwieldy if you unfold it first. Go ahead and set aside your cardboard and your bag of pieces. We won't need those right away. We just need the balsa pieces. Yeah, let's see. Oh, you can set aside the tissue too. We're not going to use the tissue as covering today. It makes a prettier plane, but it's also quite a bit heavier than the plastic covering. So we're going to focus on getting you down to the build weight of, I believe it's 7.5 grams on P-18. I don't think you can do that necessarily with the tissue. So we're just going to set that aside today. On your balsa part sheet, the laser cut sheet, you're going to notice little nibs of material that continue to connect the pieces so they don't all fall out. Sometimes you can push the piece out, but you risk breaking it. I recommend you take your X-Acto knife or your single-edged razor and just carefully cut those nibs out. Now you'll notice on the rib, you also have a triangular nib on one end of the rib. You want to leave that on there. That's notifying which is the leading edge of the rib. Okay, so enough with the introductory things. Let's see where he starts. Okay, he's going to start with the motor stick. So let's set aside the sheet of ribs and so forth. This is your motor stick, and he has it in 2 pieces joined by a couple little nibs, and we'll go ahead and cut those. So the larger piece is the motor stick. The front end of it droops down a little. That's where your prop hanger is. So that droop down is your bottom of your plane. And then the second piece is your tail boom. You're going to see one end is slightly thicker than the other end. The thicker end goes toward the motor stick, and it's going to fit right into this joint here. Now, we have found in flying these that they don't have enough left turn built into them. So we want to build a little bit of left turn into it. So if we lay down the wood so that the prop hanger is toward you, and so the right side of your wood is against your building board. And then if you take your piece of cardboard that came in the box and scoot it under the tail boom, and I'm going to go about a third of the way in there. You're going to want to jack up the end of that 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. That's going to give you some left turn. So now that you've got it propped up there, we'll get our glue ready.
So when I put the glue on a little piece of wax paper, I put 2 or 3 drops. So it's about a blob about the size of my little fingernail.
So I'll demonstrate doing it with the thin CA applicator first. And I want to hold the joint together tightly and just touch the glue to the joint, and it'll suck right into the joint. And this is a fairly long joint, so it's going to take 3 or 4 small dots, and I'll just work myself around that. I'm getting what I can around my finger and thumb there. I'm going to let it cure for a second, and then I can get the back end here.
So I know I said I was going to use a toothpick, but I changed my mind. I have a pin applicator too. It puts down a smaller drop.
Okay, so you're using the pin applicator on the thick CA?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm gonna, since I use thin CA and it's a fairly wide joint, I'm actually gonna turn it over. It's got a good grip now. And I'm just gonna put 1 or 2 dots and drag them along the joint on the back side too. So now if we look down on the top of our motor stick and tail boom, the tail boom is going off to the left side. If you were sitting in the motor stick facing the front, your left side is the direction you want that tail boom going off to.
Probably hard to see in the camera, but I'm holding mine edge up, and you can see that the tail boom is angled this way.
Okay, so the next step's going to take a little explanation as to what I'm doing. He says to attach the prop hanger to the motor stick. So we're going to go ahead and get the prop hanger out. We'll talk about it a little bit first, because Brian and I are both going to do this a little differently than the instructions, and we both got different methods. This is the prop hanger that comes with the kit. It's a 3D printed prop hanger, and it fits nicely onto the front. It's a very snug fit onto the front of the motor stick. And then your prop, you can get the wire through that slot and push the black bearing into place. I prefer to use the Ikera prop because it's lighter, but the hole in the prop hanger isn't big enough. So I've designed a new prop hanger for those of you with access to a 3D printer. You can find this on Thingiverse on my account, and we can send a link to that when we do our follow-up at the end of this. And this prop hanger is very similar to the one in the kit, but the hole is bigger, and the IKERA hub plugs right into that hole. So that's what I'll be using. I also have printed with that a little collar adapter that can be pushed in, and then the stock kit prop can be inserted into that prop hanger too. Nothing wrong with using the prop hanger that came with the kit if you're going to use the prop that came with the kit. Brian also uses the IKERA prop, but he has a different setup.
So I am going to use the IKERA prop hanger that comes with the propeller. And because it has a thinner slot than the thickness of the fuselage, this will be tricky to see, but I've sanded very evenly the nose just a little bit thinner. So it's an 1/8 inch thick piece of wood. You only have to take off about 1/100 of an inch. And this prop hanger will fit on the thicker fuselage. So you want a nice snug fit, and I just slip it on. And I like to put a pretty big blob of glue in the prop hanger, because if the airplane happens to stall and crash, then it's one of the few joints that can take a little extra glue, I think.
Okay.
So it's the only time I use the bottle of glue directly.
When you're doing this, trial fit your hanger first and see how it looks when the entire length of the glued surface is pressed against the wood. You don't want to have it tilted like that. You're going to add up thrust to the plane. So make sure it seats all the way. Make sure you know how that feels.
Sorry for interrupting, but I
Sure.
think we have a problem. So it's like, how do we connect like the green?
To the
Or-
propeller.
Okay, the green piece here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to sit right on the front here.
Oh,
You can set the prop aside. You don't need the prop at this point. This is just the prop hanger. And so the tray portion of it
the tray.
This
Okay.
one.
will go right on the front of the motor stick,
I see.
like that.
No, other way.
No, the tray.
And then when you put the propeller into the green prop hanger, you can see you have to slip it over the wire hook first, because the slot is narrow. So you slip it over the wire hook, and then you push that black barrel into the hole in the green prop hanger.
Okay.
Does that make
But
sense?
we won't need to put the prop on it. All you want to do right now is get the green prop hanger onto your, let me see if I can focus that a little bit. So there's the green prop hanger. So it's flush with the front and it's pushed all the way on. You don't want it tilted like that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing though, but with my black prop hanger, so I can use my IKERA prop. You can do this with the gray. Now, Brian indicated that he puts a thick CA from the bottle. I'm going to use the toothpick method and get some thick CA into the slot, into the channel on the prop hanger, and then slip it back on exactly how we trial fit it. You want to move a little bit quickly so the glue doesn't grab halfway on. Make sure it's pressed on all the way, and that thick CA will take a few moments to set up.
And after I get the prop hanger on, I because there's going to be clay added to the nose of this airplane anyhow, probably, I don't mind adding a little bit more glue around the edges with my glue tool. Probably overkill, but just don't want to have that area break. So I'm not going to do this in this video, but I'm going to bend it. I'm going to remove the hook from this IKEA prop, and I'm going to bend my own hook out of 20 thousandths wire because I like my hook better than this hook. That would be maybe the subject of a future video.
Okay, anybody have any questions on the prop hanger before we move on? Okay. Next, you'll get out of your bag this little plywood part. It's your wing posts. Okay, and you'll notice one wing post is longer than the other. That's your front one. And I've had kids put them on backwards. So I'm going to put an F on the front one and an R on the rear one. So F on the longer one, R on the shorter one. Okay. So mark those and set them aside for a minute. We're going to go back to the motor stick here. And you'll see there's two holes in the motor stick. Small holes, about 1/16 inch diameter. That's where you're going to screw the wing onto it. Look in those holes, make sure they're clear. If there's a little scrap of wood or something in the hole, use a toothpick or a piece of wire or something and just clear the hole out. Mine are clear here, so we're ready to go ahead and okay. So he tells you to take your nylon screw, so a little white screw in your bag, and screw it in from the left side. Remember your prop hanger is on the bottom, so if you're sitting in it, it's going to be this side, and you're going to gently screw that into the hole. You want to screw it until it comes all the way through to the other side. So you're looking at the top, it's coming in from the left side, coming out the right side. We'll go ahead and screw that back out. And we'll screw in the same screw into the front hole. What we're doing here is taking a bare hole and we're making threads.
So if your fingers aren't as strong as Coach Chuck's, you see I'm using a screwdriver. Jeweler's screwdriver are pretty handy.
Okay, once you've screwed it in and out, you've got threads formed there. Now, this is my preference. If you don't have thin CA, I wouldn't do this. But what I like to do now is put a drop of thin CA into the hole. The risk here is you glue your screw into the hole and then you've made a mess. So a drop of CA into each hole, and I don't want that to grab onto the screw. So if you have kicker, normally comes in a spray bottle. I'm going to show you a technique for using kicker. I put some in a small glass bottle here, and instead of spraying and getting it all over everything, I just take a piece of wood, scrap piece of balsa, dip it in the kicker and touch it onto the joint where I'm trying to fire off the CA. And that just makes sure my CA is not going to stick to the screw, because now the CA is dry. The glue is dry. At this point, I can, and that reinforces the threads. I can thread the screw in again just to clear the threads and thread it back out. This is totally optional, and if you're uncomfortable with doing it, don't do it, because you'll end up gluing the screw in. If you don't have kicker, you're going to want to leave it for an hour or so before you screw the screw in, because especially if you have thick CA, it will grab to it. So don't do that step unless you're confident in what you're doing and have thin CA and kicker. But that just strengthens the threads a little. If at some point the threads get stripped out, you can put a drop of CA in there, let it dry, and then retap the threads. Sometimes I will use a metal screw. It's a 256 screw, and you can pick something up like this at Ace Hardware. And I've sanded the end to a slight point, and if it's a stubborn hole, a metal screw will screw in there better than the nylon screw. But with that little bit of CA, the nylon screw still went in nicely, and that's reinforced my threads a little bit. You can go ahead and get the rest of your nylon parts out of your bag. That's going to consist of the second screw, and 2 white nylon washers. I don't think he mentions the washers in the plan, but he started adding them to the kit. And what you're going to do is put one of these washers on each of the screws.
So Chuck didn't mention this, but I'll throw this in for the fun of it and for the coaches and students. So when we offset the tail boom by slipping the piece of cardboard underneath the tail boom as we glued it on, we were shooting for offsetting it about 1/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch over a 6-inch length is your chance to use trigonometry. If you're curious, how many degrees did you offset the tail boom? It's the inverse sine of 1/4 over 6, which is 2.38 degrees, which is a typical average amount to offset a tail boom on a lot of indoor airplanes, 2 to 3 degrees. So a little fun. You're wondering, what do I use math for? We use it all day, every day.
We're going to take the longer wing post, the one that you put an F on it if you marked. If you didn't mark it, just hold it up and put the longer one on the front hole on the left side of the plane. You're going to put the slot over the hole and then put the screw through the slot and into the hole that you threaded in the motor stick. So something like that. You can take the screwdriver he gave you and run that screw in. Do not over tighten it. It just needs to be snugged up. If you over tighten it, it will strip out the balsa wood. So just until it snugs up against the wood, and that wood can still move, but it's a little bit snugged up. You're going to do the same for the rear post. Guess it helps to get the screw through the post first.
It's a tight fit. And I will do what Chuck demonstrated with the thin CA on the threads later. I think it's a big help to have the threads hardened with CA glue. You have to use thin CA, good quality thin.
Okay, so now we've got the front and rear posts lightly screwed to the motor stick and more or less perpendicular. Now, if you're like me and every little bit of weight is that's not doing you any good, you want to get rid of, these screws are awfully long. So you can come in with your razor blade or your X-Acto knife If you want, it's not necessary, but it'll save 1/10 of a gram, or not even 1/10 of a gram, a few hundredths of a gram. And just cut off the nylon screw on the back side. Just be patient, let the blade do the work. More of a sawing motion than a pushing motion, and off it comes. Don't have to do that. That saves a tiny amount of weight. I'm just picky about that kind of thing. Oh, actually, he uses a pair of cutters to do that. That's probably safer than using the razor blade. If you have a pair of cutters, you could even use a pair of scissors.
A stiff pair of fingernail clippers might even work.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the motor stick, has the prop hanger on it and has the 2 wing posts on it. We've got the tail boom glued on with a slight angle on the tail boom. That's pretty much completed for now, our motor stick. We've got one step later on the motor stick, but we'll set it aside for now. On this next step, we're going to start framing up our wing. And so you're going to get 5 of the wing ribs. That's the larger ribs with the little triangular point on the inside or concave portion of the rib. Going to go ahead and use your X-Acto or I like using a single edge razor. It's a little thinner than the X-Acto knife. Makes a cleaner cut, and it's still pretty safe. Gives you a little more control, but if you got an X-Acto knife, it'll work on this kit. We also use broken off pieces of double edge razor blades, but that's more useful on a very light airplane like an F-1D. So I've cut the little nibs on 5 of the ribs, and I knocked them out. Set them aside, and then we want to get 2 wing spars. The wing spars are all identical. There's 4 of them up on this edge. They're the longer spars here that have a slot at one end. You're going to want to be really careful pulling these out. Make sure you cut all those nibs, because these little ends can break off fairly easily.
If you should happen to break anything, a little dot of CA on that spot while you hold it maybe flat on a piece of wax paper or something like that, and you can repair it.
Yeah, you don't want to force this. If there's any, if it's not dropping out, find out where it's held up. These corners in here tend to be not quite cut all the way. I'm just gonna, yeah, it looks like mostly that's what was holding it down, was these corners. Okay, we got one out, and there's the other one. Now we're going to build 2 wing panels separately. So one of the most important things here is you want to make sure you build a right wing panel and a left wing panel. Otherwise, you're going to have trouble. So the first one doesn't matter too much. You just got to make sure the second one gets built backwards from the first. Now, I've got this on wax paper. I like to use foam board because I can pin things down, but on this particular build, because it's all laser cut, you really don't need to pin things down. It all self fixtures. He's got us building it upside down. And remember, when you look at these ribs, one end has this little triangular nib on it. That's your leading edge. You want to make sure all those are pointing in the same direction. So we're going to declare this as our leading edge up here, or down in your view, I guess. And we're going to slip a rib upside down so it's curving up from the board into the first slot. And the nib is at that end that went in. And we'll do a second rib into the next slot. And that one's a little loose. You can just lick the end a little bit and it'll swell the wood and it'll make it fit a little better. Or if you have a little bowl of water, you could touch that to it. So all we're doing is pre-assembling this without glue. Making a little dinosaur bone.
As you insert each rib all the way, if you press on the rib, it'll make the leading edge of the rib flush with the leading edge part. And that'll keep all the ribs relatively straight, the trailing edges of the ribs relatively even and straight.
And he's pointing out on this rib here that's closest to the slotted end of the spar is slightly tilted, and that's to help with joining up your dihedral later. Okay, and he makes a big point of don't force it if it won't go. Squeeze the rib a little if it's tight. Lick it or wet it a little if it's loose. Then before putting glue on here, we're going to go ahead and fit the other spar. So now we've fitted all the ribs. We can pick it up. It won't fly like this. If you shake it, it won't stay together. But you can look it over here, and one of my spars isn't quite straight with the other one. I can just wiggle it a little bit. And if I sight down from front to back or back to front, I can see that the two spars are parallel to each other. If I sight from the end, I can see all 5 nibs on the ribs are lined up with each other. That's your leading edge or your front of your plane. Now, he does this next step with the wing upside down. And that puts the 2 spars up in the air because the ribs are curved. I prefer to do it right side up like this. And now both spars are laying on my table, so I know they end up parallel to each other.
So for those of you watching carefully, you'll see I'm actually doing something slightly different than Coach Chuck. I bonded all the ribs to one edge, the leading edge, but I also took a look to see, are the tips of the ribs relatively even, the trailing edge ribs, and then I tweaked them a little bit until they looked nice and even. For some reason, I don't know, I like the one set done before I start doing the other set. So here's an idea for right stuff. If you maybe, coaches, if you have a middle school student that's brand new that you think may not be able to handle one of the more complicated right stuff kits, I have bought these kits for P-18 or for right stuff from Laser Cut Planes. And we built all the flying surfaces with this and replaced the fuselage with a nice long, kind of high quality fuselage, which is just a stick. So the students who are maybe very young and have trouble with a more challenging build can build their wings like this. And then the overall airplane is pretty simple then.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got my wing constructed, wing panel and laying flat, and I'm going to take a drop of thin CA, and I'm going to put one on each side of each rib, right on the crack between the rib and the spar.
So since I glued one edge, I'm doing the straightening before I glue the second edge. So my wing is slightly cockeyed, twisted, so I'm twisting it the other way a bunch. And then I'm holding it up and looking at it. And I may do that a couple of times until it looks nice and straight. And then I'm going to glue the ribs to the trailing edge. So twist.
Now, on a more complicated build plane, you won't have the advantage of these little pockets that the ribs go into. The ribs will generally just butt up against the spar, and then you just glue it. And in that case, you need to fixture everything to hold it in place. And what I've got on this board is a piece of basswood, and I can use pins to hold my leading edge right up against the basswood. And I'd have another piece of basswood here, and then I'd trim the ribs to fit. And I would normally use some heavy, like 1/2 inch nuts, just hardware nuts, one on each side of the rib to keep it from falling from side to side. These laser cut planes, it's a very simple assembly, very easy to get straight without pins, without necessarily even graph paper under the panel. So this is panel number 1. This is the leading edge because we've got the nibs here. This is the center, so this makes it the right-handed panel. You've got your curvature of your ribs are up, and the nib indicates this is the leading edge, so it's going this way, and therefore it's the right panel. We're going to build the second one, and we have to make sure it's opposite. So if you're still building your first, go ahead and continue with that. I'm going to cut out my ribs and repeat for the second one. Go ahead and finish up your first panel. And if you're caught up with Brian and I, go ahead and cut out your ribs and your spars for your second panel.
So here's another little bit of info. So several years ago, when middle school flew this small propeller for Right Stuff, I had a couple of 6th graders build this kind of wing from laser cut planes with a longer fuselage stick. And at our regionals, they actually beat the team that was the eventual state champion that year. So the state champion was from Holt and middle school, and the team that was flying this really basic wing structure beat them at their regionals. That team didn't get to go to state, so they didn't get a chance to try for a win at states. So even a real basic wing like this, you can get to perform really well with the right propeller and the right rubber winding strategy and the right rubber density for the propeller. The other thing you can watch, and maybe you already are, everyone that's watching, watch where Coach Chuck and I put our fingers. So you may have noticed I'm holding my finger against the leading edge, and I'm holding the rib very close to the end of the rib, not way back here. Because if you push on a thin stick like that, holding it with a whole bunch of sticking out like that, it might break. So I have a finger here keeping the leading edge from moving, and then I'm getting the rib started in the slot, and then keeping my finger there so that as I push on the rib, it slides right in and nothing gets broken.
Here's something Coach Brian mentioned a few minutes ago. As I remove this piece of balsa from my sheet, one of the triangles here broke off. And so all I'm going to do is fit that triangle back where it belongs. Take a very tiny drop of glue and drop it into where it broke off. Whoops. And glue it to my finger.
What size of the ribs?
No, you have two different sides. Just say
We
that.
have two different size ribs. So are they for the ribs on the wings? Are they on each wing? Are they supposed to be one smaller, one bigger?
No, you should have two sets of wood for the wing, and they're going to be identical. So if you go back to your sheet here, you had two spars here, and you had, whoops, I took the wrong one out. My fault. The spars with the slots in them. So this set and this set, so they're above the ribs, are your wing spars. The spars without slots in them are your stab spars. So I pulled the wrong spars off for my second wing. I'm glad you said something, or that would have been really embarrassing.
You just would have had your stabilizer built before us.
Well, with wing ribs.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, the shorter ribs are for the stabilizer or the stab.
Shorter ribs and shorter spars are your stab.
If you accidentally have some short ribs in the wing spar, you can just chop them off and chop a corresponding amount off of a wing spar, and then you can butt joint the two little bits together. It's a little challenging, but not too bad. And then you'll have a stab spar that is stab rib that is undersized by the amount you chopped off, and you just would take some material off of your frame and chop a little chunk out that's like 16 square and tack glue it on, and then cut it clean to the same length using one rib next to the other. So all things that maybe go a little wrong can always be fixed with balsa airplanes.
All right, how's everybody doing on their first side of their wing frame? Is that going well? Okay, no complaints. Now, I want you to watch this very carefully. If you're still building on your first panel, just take a quick break and take a watch at what I'm doing here. Here's my first panel. I've got the slots here. I've got the ribs are concave upward. So the wing is upside down on the table. I'm taking my new spars for the new half, and the slot end meets the slot end of the first rib. Here's the nibs on the first panel. So this is your leading edge. Again, you're upside down. And I'm going to put these ribs in here. So again, the leading edge. This makes a mirror image of your first rib panel. Very important. This is where he's got in bold print, symmetry alert. Don't make two left wings. Okay, so I've got the nib both toward you or toward the bottom of your screen. That's your leading edge. I've got the slots together, and that makes sure I'm building a mirror image of my first structure. Any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my ribs inserted just like we did on the first one.
So here's a fun tip. If you're using the 2-pin applicator, sometimes they get gummed up. I usually wipe them between every use with my fingers because I don't care if I get a little glue on my fingers. But if they get a little gummed up, you can take an old razor blade, see, labeled old, not a new one, and you can scrape and get the gummed up stuff off. If you leave that there, then the next time you try to pick up a drop, it won't pick up the drop of glue cleanly, and you'll either get a inadequate drop or usually, yeah, too small of a drop will get picked up. So I'll scrape the insides of the pins and the outside of the pins, and now I have a clean glue applicator. Another tip for the fun of it, if you're using wax paper for your glue, if you hold the glue applicator like a pencil, it's more likely to poke holes in your wax paper, and then it'll leak all over your foam, and you can see these dissolved holes in the foam. That's previous students doing this. So if you hold it more like a brush for an artist, then the glue applicator is approaching the little puddle of glue at a shallow angle, and it's less likely to poke a hole in the wax paper and cause the glue to leak everywhere. So you can see how I'm holding it, not like a pencil, like that.
Okay, I've framed up my second wing panel now, and I again put my first wing panel next to it. Now I went ahead and put a little bit of magic marker at each of the nibs so they're easier to see, but they're all at this end on both wing panels. We got the slots in next to each other. We're absolutely certain that these are mirror images of each other. So I'm going to go ahead and hit these with joints with CA.
So that's the old measure twice, cut once adage. Double check everything more than once.
We had 12 people over here building these kits at the same time all over my kitchen. And we did indeed have one person put it together with 2 left wings. We managed to catch it before he glued it. So double checking is always a good thing.
So I mentioned already that we had a very competitive airplane built with this simple wing structure.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
And we often, when we're competing, have students or teams that want to see my team's design. And we don't, I told the students it doesn't really matter. If they want to look at your design, that's totally fine. Because the students know, and probably everyone on this call knows, real high performance comes from lots of testing and getting the perfect rubber density for your propeller and the perfect optimal propeller pitch on your propeller or propeller type too. So the design, I like to tell my students, the actual design of the airplane is maybe only 20% or less of the performance. And we've won Michigan States with a almost completely stock Freedom Flight kit with only the modification on the propeller. That was 2015. I don't think that our own teams from 15 could beat the teams from 18 and 19.
Brian, we've got 2 people in the waiting room. I'll see if I can let them in.
Oh, I've been looking. I didn't see. Oh yeah, sure enough.
Okay, we apologize. We just, we've had our heads down building and we just saw 2 people in the waiting room, so we just admitted you. We are recording this, so you'll get a link later. You can review what we've done already. Those who just joined, if you go to the chat and just introduce yourself, tell us what school you're going to, whether you're a student or a coach, and whether you're building along with us or building later. At this point, you're probably building later. So I apologize. We tried to keep an eye on that, and we got to building and haven't been looking up.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got 2 wings framed up. If you're not quite finished with your wings, go ahead and continue with that, because we're going to start on the stab. It's virtually the same as the wing, except smaller. Again, 2 spars and 5 ribs. So same process, but you'll notice these ribs, these smaller ribs, don't have a little triangular nib on the bottom of them. That's because they're completely symmetric, whereas the wing ribs have a slightly different curvature toward the front of the wing. These 2 spars for the stab are completely symmetric as well. So there's no slots at one end to line up. And it looks like it's a little bit tight on this rib, so we'll just squeeze the rib a little. Just like the wing, we're going to put the ribs in place on one spar. Just a slight squeeze to get it in there.
So I cheated a little. Look at that, it's already done.
What's that?
My stab is done.
Oh,
I had to build something yesterday to refresh myself on this kit method. So that means I should have time to watch to see if anyone else is joining.
looks like the stab is a little bit tighter than the wing, at least on my kit. It's really a function of how thick the piece of balsa wood is. The laser cutting is very accurate, but the tightness into the groove is due to the thickness of the balsa that was laser cut. So the thickness does vary a little from sheet to sheet, and you might find some are loose and some are tight.
Somebody have a question?
Okay, once your ribs are in tight and you picked it up, make sure things are parallel and straight. One loose rib here, but other than that, it looks real good. Then we're going to glue it up just like we did with the wing.
So Yu Ming, I see that you joined. I didn't notice that. You're a coach for East Grand Rapids, correct?
Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I'm the coach for Northview High School.
Northville, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So I've never built anything with Coach Chuck before. This is Coach Brian. And I see he holds his glue tool the same way I do.
I don't use wax paper anymore for my glue because the kids have poked so many holes in wax paper.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I'm gonna have to switch.
So whenever we have an extra container, we wash the lid and throw the container out.
So these holes in this foam board, this is a foam board from Home Depot it's called a Owens Corning project panel. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, just pink foam. And it dissolves when CA hits it.
Oh,
It also dents when students lean their elbows on it.
well, we're letting the kids catch up. One of the things I discovered, we've got various glues in little glass bottles like this. And it's got a solvent in it that will eat my tablecloth, that'll eat my green cutting board, makes a mess of everything. So I 3D printed some top hats like this, and the bottle fits in that and sits down. So they don't knock it over quite so easy. And I've knocked over my share as well. So you learn little tricks like that.
And another fun dissolving story is acetone will dissolve most foams that glider flaps are made out of, if anyone has built a flapped glider before. So if you're trying to break a joint or fix a joint on a foam flapped ELG, don't use acetone. And the person whose airplane had this done to it will be at the, oh no, she won't be at the Nationals. You don't get to see the one with the bite out of it.
So we can see one video of kids working 10A. You guys doing well? Everything good?
They are repairing more than building as of now, because they flipped, they made mistake, they flipped by mistake. So now they are fixing that, but they are getting along though.
Okay, have you built your stab or are you just on your second wing panel at this point?
Building the stab and fixing our second wing simultaneously.
Okay. Anybody else building want to give us an update as to where you are right now? Don't see any other.
I'm finished with both of my wings and the stab part.
All right. Fast building coach.
Yeah, I'm following
We've
along.
got our wings and our stab also finished and glued.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Well, the last few are getting those steps completed. I'm going to rearrange my cameras here for the next steps. Actually, first, I'm going to go ahead and cut the vertical fin out of the wood panel here. It's the last piece that's in here, but it's the same thing, cutting away the little nibs to clearly get the fin out. And we're just going to pull it out and set it aside. So now the wood sheet is empty. This solid piece of wood from the fin in the middle, that's scrap as well. So what we want to keep is this frame of a fin.
So people may or may not have seen this, but normally I'd have my whole work area. I have a sheet of graph paper for my work area. And it's kind of handy lining up parts that are when you're building freehand like this. And I would normally cover this entirely with wax paper so I could work wherever I wanted. But I found that with the camera, the wax paper was causing a lot of glare, which I still have. But so I just have a little sheet of wax paper that I was putting under each joint as I was gluing each joint.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move to the next step here. If you're still working on framing, keep one eye on what we're doing here. What I want to do next is cut our covering. If I can find where I set it. Here we go. So we're going to carefully open up just the large folds of the covering. So you're going to end up with a piece no bigger than that. So it's about 20 to 22 inches long and about 4 or 5 inches wide. You're not going to open it up all the way. It's a bag. Then we're going to come in and we're going to measure about 6 inches. It's not really that critical. And you can use a razor or scissors and just come in here and cut crossways. 6 inches, and I'm going to do it again at another 6 inches. Brian, did you have to cut the end off here? Or?
I didn't need to for this airplane, but eventually if you were building one more with the same covering, you would.
Okay. So now I've got a 6-inch strip and I can open that up. And what you're going to find is you've got a 6-inch long tube.
Where do we cut it?
What's that?
Where do we cut the plastic at?
So if you laid it out long ways on your board and it's about 20, yeah, like that. Now measure in from one end about 6 inches and just cut across.
So if you
Okay, thank you.
if you cut one end of the bag is sealed, which would be the bottom of the bag. If you cut from that end, you'll also have to cut off the little sealed edge so that you can unfold it later. If you start with what is essentially the top of the bag, it's not sealed, then you can measure 6 inches and cut straight across, another 6 inches and cut straight across.
Are we supposed to have like excess paper left?
Yes. Yeah, you'll use about half of the total covering material to do one airplane. So in theory, you have enough covering to do 2 airplanes. So your 6-inch cutoff, now when you unfold basically the circumference of the bag, you want to wait on this, Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure everyone has everything cut. Let us know when you have your cut done correctly, the 6-inch cuts. Does everybody have it done?
That looks like they're doing their second one there.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to have a lot of excess on this. Brian, I'll be right back. I forgot my soldering iron.
Oh, okay. Anybody still making these 2 6-inch cuts? Are we set?
Okay, so once you've got one of your 6-inch pieces, go ahead and open that all the way up.
So you have a cylinder basically of plastic now, right? That's your bag. And then did you, everyone needs to make one more cut across the cylinder, right?
Right. So we've got a cylinder here. We've opened it all the way up and flattened it out. And we can simply cut off one edge.
Excuse me, do we cut 6 inches from both ends of the plastic?
You can cut it from, I started at one end, cut 6 inches in, and then cut another 6 inches. You just want 2 loops, 6 inches wide, and then you'll unfold them.
Okay, thank you.
So after you make the next cut, your thing that was a cylinder, that was the circumference of the bag, is now laid out as a flat sheet. It should be almost 30 inches long. 30 by 6 is what you're ending up with. Did everyone notice I have a green bag? Well, I already cut apart the bag that came with the kit, and then I realized, oh no, I need to demonstrate this. I went to the grocery store last night, bought a couple things, and picked up a few extra green bags at the produce area. And they're slightly different looking than what comes in the kit, but the same weight material. Does everybody have one piece now, at least one piece?
Yeah, they're almost there, Tane. Okay, go ahead and open that one up. And you'll find you got a big cylinder.
Oh yeah, I see.
Keep opening it up, keep unfolding it until you have one layer all the way around. Excellent. All right, so you got a big cylinder. You want to turn that into a big strip. So just cut across somewhere. Still got a double layer somewhere in there, don't you?
There you go. A relatively perpendicular cut to your other cut is handy, but it's not critical.
It's got some serious scissors there. All right, now I've taken that big flat piece you've just made, and I've laid one end of it on my building board. And I put the wing on top of it. And just for ease of working, I'm going to now cut it an inch or two longer than my wing is. You can use scissors, you can use a knife blade, but now my covering is maybe 3/4 of an inch here. I'll mark the edge of my covering. You can see the covering's a bit bigger than my wing. You got lots of covering, so if you mess it up, you can cut another piece. If it really gets bad, you can do what Brian did, go down to the grocery store to the veggie section, and this is just veggie bag material.
My hands are showing the two ends of my piece of covering, and I've got the wings sitting on it.
Okay, so Brian didn't separate his covering into a shorter piece just for the one wing panel, right, Brian?
Oh, I was going to, I just didn't do
Oh,
it.
okay.
So
Okay.
I would cut right here. So you'll end up with two pieces, about each one about 12 inches by 6 inches. Or even 11 by 6.
Like we said, nothing critical there. Now, next thing we'll be doing is spray glue with 3M77. If you prefer and don't want to make a mess in the house, you can use a glue stick, like a purple glue stick, and carefully put glue on your frame. But that's, I find kids tend to apply too much pressure and they can break the wood on the frame. So if you have 3M77, that's preferred. You want to make sure you're not on mom's kitchen table with this. What I like to do is I have a cardboard box, and I'll move the camera now. And you can see it's about 3 feet across, 2.5 feet into it, and then it's folded up and taped, and it goes about 15 inches up on the backstop there. That makes a nice place to work. And then I take a piece of scrap computer paper and I put a little A in it just by folding it. You could use a page of the instructions if you want, but I'd keep those around. I set that down inside the box, and I take one of my wing frames. You want to make sure the curve, the convex side of the ribs is up. So the ribs are a little hill on there, not a valley.
This side is going to go up. You're going to spray the glue on this side, the curved side up, convex curve. Take your time to make sure you get that correct.
We just got a new one joining. Okay, now, the 3M77, you can add a lot of weight to your airplane with this glue. We're not going to go all over the thing. Okay, we're going to spray above the frame and let the glue settle down onto the frame. And I'm going to go from one side to the other in a fairly quick motion. I'm going to start my spray before I get to the wing, stop it after I get off the wing. And I'm doing it from a good distance and moving pretty quick because it doesn't take much glue. So I did one pass for the leading edge, one pass for the trailing edge. That should be plenty of glue. Now I'm going to carefully pick it up by a corner. Going to come back to the covering that I put down on my workboard. Carefully line it up so I'm completely on the covering and gently drop it onto the covering. The center of the rib will stick first. Now I can push down the edge that's closest to me and just run my finger along it. And then roll it up onto the other edge. Push it down. Okay, I'm going to watch Tane here. It looks like they're ready to spray.
Should we spray our wings and then put it on the plastic, or should we spray the wing on top of the plastic?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So should we spray the wing, like this piece, on top while it's on top of our plastic covering? Or
No. Your plastic covering's over on your workbench. You're just getting a real light coating of glue onto the frame.
Okay. And the concave side is out, right? The part that's going to be sticking to the plastic.
The convex. It should be a little mountain, not a little valley.
Okay.
What's the plastic? Hang on. What's the plastic in? It looks shiny in there.
No, it's just supporting it up so it doesn't stick to the.
But it will stick
Oh,
that. It will stick.
Okay, I just want to make sure your covering was not in the box.
Yeah, no, it's not our covering. It's something else. It's
Okay,
just
so
a
just a
holder.
light spray from one end to the other. I did 2 passes, one for the leading edge and one for the trailing edge. Don't hold it that close. Come up a good 12 inches away from it at least.
Yeah.
All right, a little quicker, move quicker. That's way too much glue. All right. It's just a dusting. So, okay, now take that over to your plastic. Turn the frame over so it's like a rocker on the plastic, and gently set it in the middle of the plastic. Good. No, don't push it all down at once. Now, run your finger along one leading edge like that. There you go. Now rock it the other way and run your finger on the other edge. That's fine. It should come up like that. Perfect. Okay, and now you can set that one aside and get your next piece of plastic cut to length.
Wait, not yet. No. Put this on it first.
Yeah, but this is still like a.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but still.
So I will admit that we actually do all of our glue spraying in the garage. So in addition to being in a box with newspaper spread all around and both cars removed from the garage, we spray glue.
This glue will get on everything.
And if somebody should happen in their socks on in the garage to step in the glue, I tell them you can remove that sock and throw it away because you're not going to walk in the house with glue on the sock. And that sock will never be clean again. That's only happened once though.
Okay, I'm ready to spray my second wing panel. So let's see, Tanae, I want you to watch as I do this. I've got it in my box now, and I'm going to take my spray. I'm a good 15 inches or so above the wood, and I'm going to start at one end and go to the other, just that quick, and I just a little bit more at that end. It's very quick. You're tending to pause too long over one part of the wood. And I'll take it and drop it onto my covering, press it in place. And you'll see it very aggressively sticks. That tells me even with that light dusting, I've got way more glue than I need. We found on our F-1D planes, when we first started covering them, we were spraying them as light as we could, and we were gaining about 100 milligrams with the glue. And when we improved our technique, we got down to adding 8 milligrams with glue. So on a plane that only weighs 1.4 grams, that matters a lot. On these planes, it's not as critical. Okay, I'm gonna do finally the same thing with the stab. I managed to fit all three surfaces onto one piece of plastic, one of my 6-inch pieces of plastic, which is fine. You've got plenty of plastic, you don't have to be that conservative. We'll spray this exactly the same as we did with the wing. Just 2 quick spurts. And we'll come back and drop it onto the plastic again. Okay, I've got my 3 surfaces covered, and now I've got to get a little bit more covering out for my fin. Now the fin, I think he was pretty specific on which side we want to cover.
I think he said to cover the left side.
Not even seeing where he covers it. Cover it on the left side when the time comes. So your fin on this plane is going to ride underneath. So it's not like a regular airplane where it's up top, it's underneath. So it rides like this. The left side is going to go like this. So I'm going to turn that over and spray that side. It's not critical if you end up putting the covering on the wrong side of the fin. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. I think it just helps the left turn a little bit. So one quick spurt is all it needs. And pop it onto the plastic, press it down. Now that I'm done with my covering, I'm going to take my 3M77. I'm going to turn the bottle upside down and hold it close to my backstop of cardboard. I don't want to spray all over the room, but we're going to use far more glue to clean out the nozzle than we used on the whole airplane. I'm going to spray it against the cardboard nice and close until the glue stops coming out and just propellant is coming out. That cleans the nozzle and you'll be able to use it again. Otherwise, you've got an expensive paperweight.
So how's 10A doing? Do you have covering on both wings and stabilizer?
Do we have to glue the stabilizer too?
Yes,
Okay.
just like the wing.
So with the other piece that is closed on the end.
Did you have 2 6-inch pieces?
Yeah, we had 2 6-inch pieces and then this remaining piece.
Oh, well, you had the 6-inch wide pieces were really long, right?
Yeah.
And then you cut them shorter to fit you've still got scrap. Just find a scrap that's big enough for the stab.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So if your covering is slightly baggy, it's not a concern. You might even make the case for a slightly baggy covering would improve the aerodynamics. Probably not because it's going to add drag. But I will tell you that the airplane, the Freedom Flight model kit model that we built with all of my students, so I had anywhere from 16 to 22 students every year. The wing that I had the worst looking covering job on it was the state champion that year. So don't be too concerned. It was dramatically baggy around the center point, and I don't think that was a good thing. But in the end, the propeller and the rubber and the winding skill was the key.
Thanks, Nate. Okay, and you've already done your fin too, so you've got all your parts now? Okay, I think we're ready to go on. The next step is cutting the covering along the edges of the wing. We're going to demonstrate, I think, 4 different ways of doing this. So the first way is the way that John does it in the plans, and that is he takes a good sharp pair of scissors and he goes counterclockwise around the wing. And what that does is it puts the top blade of the scissor right against the wood and supposedly makes a clean cut. Now, I don't have any more what would be considered sharp scissors. The other thing that John does is these tabs on the wing that go beyond the rib on both ends get cut off. So he cuts off right to the wing and right through that stab. I mean, right through that spar. And if you have sharp scissors, that'll work. The second method is if you take a sharp, and I'm talking a brand new blade, and you hold down your spar against your building board, you can cut right along the spar and angling the blade out a little from the spar so you don't slice the wood. Just take your time and it makes a nice clean cut. That's probably the way most of you will do it. The third method is a soldering iron. This is just a cheap $14 or $10 soldering iron from Home Depot. And I want to get my building board back in here because I don't want to melt my cutting board. With this soldering iron, you can come right along the edge of the wood, and I've got the wing right side up. When I use the blade, I put the wing upside down so the covering was against my cutting board. Here, I've got the wing right side up, so the covering is the thickness of balsa off of my building board, and that holds it up for the soldering iron to cut it. Soldering iron is not going to melt the balsa, and it makes a nice clean cut there. It also seals the edge of the plastic so it won't tear. It's not as big a problem with tearing on here as it is on some of the thinner covering you might use for Science Olympiad. If you cut it with a soldering iron or the razor, you still need to come in here and cut these tabs of balsa wood off to make it flush with the edge of the rib here. The fourth method, you're not going to have this tool, but I just want to show it because if you go on in indoor flying, this is a great tool to have. This is called a cautery. It's made for cauterizing wounds. So I get it from medical supply or some indoor supply houses like Indoor Free Flight Supply carries this. And it's battery powered and it heats up this little tiny tip here. And so it's a very controlled heat source, unlike my soldering iron. And with this, I just hold the button in and then I kind of paint along the edge. And it puts out a lot less heat than the soldering iron. So it's a lot easier to control what you're doing. Plus, you don't have a cord dangling in the way. These are about 20 bucks. They're really handy to have, but probably in Science Olympiad, you're not going to have one. Soldering iron works great, and the razor blade works great. So I would say scissors would be my least popular choice. I like the soldering iron or the cautery, but for your use, probably the razor blade is going to be your first choice. And let's see if I can trim this balsa off with the razor blade as well. That cuts cleanly. And we're just cutting that tab off. So now we've got a perfect rectangle wing without those little extra tabs on there. And I'll go ahead and continue with my next one here. Is there any questions? Okay.
When Coach Chuck was mentioning angling the blade away from your work so it doesn't cut into the piece of wood, the spar or the rib, angling slightly this way and slightly this way. So just a degree or so. So then the blade doesn't tend to bite into the wood as you're working. I still had mine slightly start to cut into one of the edges. And because I was moving slowly enough, I could see it happening and then I stopped. So make these cuts slowly. The other thing that we do when we're cutting covering when spray glue has been used is sometimes spray glue builds up on your blade and then it will grab your covering instead of cutting it cleanly. So we'll have a piece of shop paper towel, something like that, with a little blob of alcohol on it. And then I'll tell the students you can clean the blade by doing this, pulling it through the alcohol. They cannot do this. No squeezing the blade with 2 fingers because the blade will cut through the paper towel and get your finger.
And then same thing with the fin, you're just going to cut around the edge with your razor blade or soldering iron. You can see the soldering iron makes quick work of it.
So I have a cautery tool that I use for the finer covering. And mine is an older one that had 2 AA batteries in it. Actually, it might still be available.
If we use a solder, what's the setting we're supposed to put, like the temperature?
It says like 1, 2, like that. Is it 1, 2?
200.
200, like that it says.
200, 250.
Yeah, mine's, I think, a 25 or 35 watt soldering iron, and it can get too hot in a hurry. It's not a big problem with these coverings, but with the finer coverings, it'll go through it in a hurry. But what you've got there should work just fine.
Okay, thank you.
You just don't want to get too slow with it and start melting things back. Now, while the rest of them are finishing off trimming, I want to show you a little trick that we use. And that is for repairing small tears and so forth in your cover.
Sir, do we cut off this excess part? Yeah.
Which excess are you talking about? The little tab at the...
It's like the thing that's coming out of like the rims.
Yeah, we'll cut those off. I forgot to do that on these last 2.
Yeah, so when you're done cutting, the end of the rib should look like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Those little extra triangle pieces are just there so that you can position the rib. And now that the ribs are in there and the glue is dried, they're removed before you assemble the wing.
I had one come loose here, so I'll just put another drop of glue on it.
So this would be one of the things we're going to demonstrate at the seminar and workshop at the Nationals, is covering, using a covering frame with the higher grade ultrafilm covering that most Bright Stuff kits come with.
Okay, so I'm gonna, while everybody's getting their stuff trimmed up, I'm gonna give a quick demo on patching a hole. So let's say you had a piece of covering and it's stretched on a frame and you poke something through it. Now I've got a split piece of covering there. I'm gonna take a piece of either cardstock or paper and just cut a strip out of it, and I'm gonna wipe on some Vaseline. You could use chapstick as well. And I'm gonna stick this down to a fresh piece of covering. So now the covering is from here to the end of my piece of paper, and I can trim the covering and maybe a little bit of the paper around. So now I have a piece of paper with covering on about 3/4 of it. I will take that, lay it on my spray table, and the end of the paper that does not have covering on it, I want to stick that under something so it doesn't get glue on it. And now we're going to take just the slightest spray of glue from far away. Find my glue again. And now that piece of plastic is slightly tacky. Whoops. And I can take that and lay it down over the split in my covering, push it down, and then peel the paper off, and I'm left with a patch covering there, covering my split, and it's got a real light film of glue on it, and it sticks really well, and I can trim that edge. So that's just a little trick for repairing plastic covering. All right, let's see where we are in the instructions here. Where did I put them? There we go. Okay, we sprayed, we've cleared our, cut our edges. All right, it's time to join our wing panels. If you are using thin CA, this is one area which I might consider using thicker CA, like medium. You're going to get this piece of ply out of your supply bag. It's got 2 T-shaped pieces in it, as well as a hook-shaped piece. Go ahead and break all the pieces free. Okay, and what John has you doing, if you notice these T-shaped pieces have a bump up here on, they're more like a Y-shaped piece, but on the top of the Y, there's a bump up here. And that bump up should fit that slot at the inboard end of your wing. And this is why I used thick here. It's not a snug fit in there, but you can feel when it's straight and perpendicular to the surface. So pick one of your tabs on one of your wings and you're going to glue this in. And I would put a little bit of glue on the face, on the 2 ends, and then on the 2 sides of the tab. Think of where it's going to contact the wood on your wing. Then place it into the slot and hold it snugly until the glue kicks off. And one of the things when you're holding glue, stuff that's gluing, if you see, I'm dancing my fingers. So I'm switching hands a lot. That way I don't get stuck to the wood. If your finger gets stuck to the wood, don't pull. What you want to do is roll it off of the wood. If you pull, you're going to pull the wood with you. So you just want to roll your finger off of a piece if you got it glued on. So now looking from the front or the rear, I guess that's the rear, I've got the Y glued to one tab in the wing. And I'm going to take the same wing and glue the other Y into the other tab. Again, I'm putting a little bit of glue on each side of the tab, and then a little glue on the face, inboard and outboard of the tab. Line that up with a slot, drop it in there, and dance my fingers again. Yeah, if you move your fingers enough, you'll feel if they're starting to stick and you know there's glue there and you don't want to hold that spot too much and get your fingers glued to it.
You can see where it is.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, never mind. Yeah.
So again, where I put the glue was on the sides of this tab, both sides, and then on the top face out here and in here. So everywhere that's going to contact the wood on the wing. So think about when you're going into the slot, this top face of the tab is not going to be touching anything but covering. So you don't need glue there. You just need glue on the two sides of the tab. But the top face of this extension is going to touch the spar. So we've got
Should we remove the plastic that's in the hole as well?
What's that?
Should we also plastic that's in the hole? So there's a little bit of plastic here from when we were covering it. So do we need to remove that plastic?
No, it'll just push it. If the tab's taller than the hole, it'll get glued to the plastic. It's fine. Yeah, I wouldn't cut that out. Okay, so I've got both of my Ys now glued solidly to one wing. The glue is already set. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other end of the Y. And I'm going to do one at a time, so I can positively hold it. Again, dancing my fingers, especially if I feel it getting sticky. Because I don't particularly like getting glued to my work. Okay, and then the final one. Now I noticed John puts it in the slot first and then adds glue. I find that tends to get you a lot more glue on it, but at least his tab is in place when he's gluing, so he's not going to risk having it partway in the slot and the glue setting up on him. So just make sure if you're putting glue on the tab like I did that you get it into the slot right away. So when you're done, you've got a wing with 2 dihedral braces, those Ys, with a fork going downward on each of them.
Do we need the washers anywhere?
I'm sorry, what?
The washers, like these white circular washers.
That should be on your motor stick. Remember, we used the washers under the head of the screw down here.
Okay. So we'll put it on. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think it's critical. I think what he found was the screw head was too small and it was pulling through the slot, so he added the washer in. It's not in his plan. All right, and as you guys are finishing that up, I'll show you the next step here, and that's mounting the glue. I mean, mounting the wing. Do not use glue at this point. We're going to take this fork and we're going to force it onto this vertical post until the 2 tabs on the fork go into that upper hole on the post. Let's see if I can get an angle where you can see it. It's a little bit tight there.
I think my camera is showing it if you want to. There it is.
Now, I've got one trick for those that are struggling to put the wing onto these vertical posts. You can sharpen the top of this vertical post a little with a sanding block. It's not going to take any strength away. You're just sharpening that last little bit. Make it come to a knife edge right at the top. And that's going to help you to insert it without breaking off those tabs. So you can see I sanded just a short little bit there, and it made it a knife blade on the top. When you're mounting the wing, look for the little nibs on the ribs that goes toward the front. And now it goes nicely in there. Yeah, I think I remember doing that with the team, and that really helps get the wing on every time. Okay, we can still see Tane here. We're not seeing anybody else that's building. Is everybody pretty much caught up, doing well?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Okay.
We're still doing good too. Trying to put the mount the wings now.
Okay, if you have a sanding block, sanding the top of those mounts really help. This is a neat tool to have. This is your mom's nail file. Steal one when she's sleeping. No, you don't want to do that. Ask her for a used one, or they're cheap. She'll give you one. Give her a kiss, she'll give you one. That's real handy for sanding these small parts. I use a 1x2 with some sandpaper glued to it for sanding larger parts. Either way works. While everybody's getting their wing finished up there, I'm gonna go grab one other tool.
You can see that the vertical wing posts slide all the way into those slats, and there's little points on the tines that pop into the little hole that's on the wing post.
How do we attach the wings to the body?
The wing attached to the body, the wing, this part right here is the wing post that's bolted to the fuselage stick.
Yeah.
It just snaps on there.
Oh, I get it.
And
Yeah.
then-
Now, that's the part I was saying, you might, if you have a piece of sandpaper, you might want to sharpen the top of those posts a little bit, and it'll go into that fork a little easier.
The thing we're calling a wing post is because most wing posts are post shaped, like 1/16 square basswood or something like that. This is like a wing post blade almost, but still called the same thing.
Now, you don't want to over tighten those screws. It's okay if it moves a little, we can lock it down later. Now those forks on those Ys, you'll shove them down onto those vertical blades. Make sure you got the front of the wing to the front of the plane. Just give a little push. If it won't go, you're going to have to sharpen that blade a little bit. Yeah, do you have a piece of sandpaper or an emery board?
We have sandpaper.
So if you just take the top of that blade and sharpen it a little bit, here, let me pull mine off again. Right here, I just took a piece of sandpaper and I took a few swipes at it, and now it's a sharp blade on the top of this.
Okay, got it.
And that will make so it's much easier to pop this fork onto it, and you slide the fork down until the two nibs on the fork go into that hole on the blade.
We're getting sandpaper right now, but
No,
yeah.
we're fine. We're fine. So just start there? Yeah. You could turn it down to 170 or so. I think it'll be fine. Okay, did you get it mounted? Oh, you're still waiting for some sandpaper?
So I think I mentioned this to you, Coach Chuck, that I do the stabilizer mounting step differently than what John recommends. I don't think we had a chance to talk about it yesterday. He's showing mounting the stabilizer by flipping the airplane over. And I like to do it this way with a couple of blocks of wood under the wingtips. And then you can mount the stabilizer and measure that it's got the half inch of tilt.
One of my favorite tools is this little drill press vise. This is from Harbor Freight. And it's a little heavy duty for indoor stuff, but it works real nice for this kind of thing because I can clamp down on my motor stick just slightly, and now I'm holding my whole wing level without having to block it up like Brian's doing. So
yeah, I like that. So if people have gotten to the point where they have their wing posts placed and they have some sort of way to block the two wings, then I'll take a lab ruler or something like that and verify that the distance from the board to the wing tip is equal for both wings. And you know that the wing is, the whole airplane is not rolled in one direction or the other.
Do we have to glue the wing pegs on?
No, don't glue them because that's removable. You can pop the wing off now to transport it in a smaller box.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
For the wings,
If
for-
one, go ahead.
for the wing, like, is it like the small triangles on the wing? Is it like facing front or back?
The little tab on the bottom of the ribs goes toward the front.
Okay.
And then I think a few people came in late, so the wing posts that hold the wing up, these flat blades, the smaller one is in the back. Okay, did you get your wing plugs in, Tane?
It just broke a little bit, so we're trying to fix it.
Yeah, that happens. Did the little fork area break?
Yeah, but you can continue. We know how to do it from there. We'll just keep looking at your instructions.
So shall we continue on with mounting the stabilizer, Chuck, you think?
Yeah, I think we need to. Tane, if that becomes a problem and you can't make it grip the vertical blade again, you may have to end up gluing it to the vertical blade. But that's last resort. Once you do that, you can't remove your wing very well. You could unscrew it each time, but then you're going to wear out your screw holes. So ideally, you get that fork working again. And if it did break, it's because you're trying to force it onto the blade too hard. You need to make that top of that blade a knife edge, and that'll open up the fork nicely. Now, one thing I do when I'm getting ready to mount the stab, we're going to be tilting it to the left side as a ½ inch higher than the right side, but the top of your tail boom is flat. So if you glued it flat on there, you're not going to have any tail tilt at all. The tail tilt helps it to turn. And so I've marked where the leading edge of the stab goes on my tail boom here. And then I will take my sanding block or emery board and just sand a little bit of an angle on that. So I'm sanding down the right side, both at the very end and where the leading edge of the stab touches onto it. So that'll give me a better glue joint when I go to glue that. Now, Brian likes to block things up to get the right height, and finding the right blocks in my house is always a problem. So I get lazy and I just do it by hand.
So luckily I have these blocks from when our two boys were about 3 years old. So and these cute little pine blocks come with the Freedom Flight kits. So since we built so many, I have a stack of those sitting around.
All right, so I've blocked up my stab now using a couple of pieces of stuff I had, a box for my scale and my sanding block, and it wants to fall down on the other side, so I put my emery board on top of it. Everything looks like it fits up real nice. And if you're looking from the back of the plane, the left side of your stab should be higher than the right side. That's what you're looking for, about a ½ inch higher. I'm just going to put a drop of thick CA at both points where the stab touches the motor stick. Lay the stab back onto the blocks and into the glue. And give that a minute to dry, and that'll be ready. How's that repair on the wing coming?
We're gluing back on the fork and
Okay. Okay, so you may have to do the stab and stuff later because it really helps to have the wing on the fuselage to line things up. Because if the wing sits on there crooked, you want the stab to, your wing is your reference. So that's why I have the wing on right now. And if I look from the back, I can see this left side is higher than the right side by about 1/2 inch. And having things blocked up like this really makes it easy. Like Brian's got the wood blocks holding his wing. I've got the vise holding my motor stick. Either way works. But freehanding it, you can do it. It's just a lot more work. Okay, my glue is set up on my stab. Now, we're going to glue this fin underneath the stab here, and the back of the fin is angled. One of the important things in the instructions is the back of the fin, this tip of the fin back here, can't extend past the back of the stab or the plane will be too long. By rule, a P-18 is 18 inches or less total length. So he's got 18 inches right to the back edge of the stab, and you don't want to extend that with your fin. So you want to make sure the fin is safely in front of the trailing edge. So it ends up pretty centered on the motor, on the tail boom. I'm just going to put a little bead of thick CA just because it gives me a little more flexibility than the thin in terms of time to put things together. And I'm sorry I'm going out of frame here. I'm just holding the fin to the side of the motor stick as the glue grabs. And I may not have got it perfectly vertical, but that's an appearance thing more than anything else. Oh well. Now for the final assembly step, we're going to go ahead and put on the prop because we have to make a measurement. Again, we want to stay legal within the rules of P-18. This is your rear motor hook, and you're going to glue this to the side of the motor stick like this, so the thin end of this hook is hanging down, pointing toward the back of the plane. That's what your rear O-ring for your rubber is going to hook to. But the distance from the back of your prop hook to, let's see, what's he say? To the rear edge of the plywood hook. So that's going to be this edge here. cannot exceed 10 inches.
We missed how you attach the back of the back
The
fin,
tail wing.
the tail wing. Can you show us again?
The fin or the stab?
Both.
I'm
Okay.
attaching, I'm doing the fin right now. Do you see what I'm doing?
Got the plane upside down, but he's already glued the stab on. The stab gets glued just to 2 points on the top. I've got it upside down here to show you. It's 2 points on the top of the motor stick. And looking from the back, the left side of the stab is a ½ inch higher than the right side. So you're tilted just a little bit relative to the wing.
Okay.
Now I'm going to measure from the back of my prop hook back 10 inches and put a mark on my fuselage. If I can find what I did with my pen, here's one. So I've got a mark there that's 10 inches from my prop hook. Does he care what side he puts it on? He's got it on the left side. I don't think it matters. But we're going to put this on so that the rear end of this hook is no further back than that line. You may want to scooch it forward 1 millimeter or 2. That won't hurt you on performance at all, and it won't break the rules. You'd hate to have to move your hook because your hook to hook distance is slightly too large. So you can see my hook there. It's on the bottom of the plane, hanging down from the bottom. And it's just ahead of my purple line. So I'm a good, safe distance. So now there's one important step remaining, and that is weight and balance. Does he reiterate the minimum weight in here, Brian?
I don't remember seeing that.
Is it 7.5 or is it 8?
7.5, yeah, that's right.
Okay, we're looking for 7.5 grams. Get out my handy dandy scale here. And I'm at 5.3 with an Ikera prop. So I'm gonna need some clay. I'm going to move this so you can see what I'm doing here. The important thing with putting on clay is you don't want to get handling the plane too much. So what I do is I add the clay to the top of the scale here and just sit it on there until I get enough extra weight to get me up to 7.5 grams. Wow, I'm not even close. Rather than manhandling the plane, I'm adding the clay to the scale. 7.575, I can take a little bit back off. That's a lot of clay. 7.43. .49. Whoop, there, yeah. When I breathe on it, it's heavy enough. 7.508, that's good. Now, if you don't have an accurate scale at home, you just want to bring some clay with you to the contest, and you can make your final weight adjustment at the contest. Where does he want his CG? Does he say?
You know, I actually didn't get that far. I'm not sure that he does say, but he has quite a bit of trimming instructions. So I saw a note that if you're going to use heavier or longer rubber motors, that you may have to shift the wing back, which I'm actually going to do because I have a lightweight propeller. So for the very advanced among you, I'm actually going to enter the part weights of this into a spreadsheet and calculate the tail volume coefficient, the neutral point, and the predicted center of gravity to give a static stability margin that I like. So if all those words are confusing to you, stay tuned for future videos.
Okay, so I will do it a different way. I've got, and Brian's doing it the right way, but I've got 12 people that have built these with me before. And this belongs to Jessamine, one of my mid-schoolers who's now moved on to high school out of town. She got the Ikera prop, and she's moved the wing back an inch because the prop's so light. But I know her plane flies really well, and it looks like her CG is about an inch forward of the trailing edge of the wing. So I'm going to say that's a good starting point because I know her plane flies really well. And with clay on the front of my plane, I'm an inch and a half forward of the trailing edge of the wing. So I can move some of my clay to the CG to get my plane to balance properly. So I'm real happy with the way the plane built. It built up almost 3 grams underweight, which gives me a lot of leeway to do things with clay. And
Chuck, should we talk about the wing incidence, since you've got an airplane there that flies well? What kind of wing incidence does it have on it?
Oh yeah, I can take a look at that. Typically, I've found that on most indoor planes, you want about 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters difference between the front and the back of the wing. Let's see, she's at 37 millimeters on the back to the bottom of the fuselage, and the front is 41. So she's got 4 millimeters of incidence. She's got the back almost all the way up and the front about halfway up on the screw adjustment.
So in my frame, I've got a measurement showing the measurement of the trailing edge from the bottom of the fuselage. I've got a lab ruler that's right up against the wing trailing edge. And I can see that, at least for my wing post setting, it's about 35 millimeters to the bottom edge of the fuselage. So if 4 millimeters is the target, then I'm going to put the ruler against the leading edge, and I'm going to look for about 39 millimeters, which it's just about there. Luck. Did everyone see those measurements?
And one thing you'll notice is the bottom of the fuselage is a straight line where the top has some lumps for the wing hold downs. So almost always you're going to end up measuring to the bottom of the motor stick or fuselage. On most airplanes, that makes your straightest reference. Now, I'm going to have to cut out because I'm going to an airplane event next weekend, and so we're celebrating Father's Day today, and people are just starting to show up. So I'm going to have to sign off. I'm glad we got through the entire build. You guys have done great. And it really helped having the video feedback from Tane and that crew, so we could pace ourselves. And Brian, can you stick around for a few more minutes in case they need any questions resolved on finishing things up?
Sure, and I thought I would tie a motor too.
Yeah, tying motor. A tying motor. Does it come with O-rings?
It does not, that I can see, no. But I have some, and hopefully schools have these from their Right Stuff builds. So I'm going to tie it.
Okay. So I'm going to sign off. I really appreciate everybody that came out. I hope to meet some of you guys at the AMA Nationals this summer in Pontiac. I'll be there Tuesday through Thursday, flying several events. So I look forward to it and look forward to meeting with you and hopefully trimming these planes out and getting some good experience on them. So thank you for joining us, and I'll be in touch. If you have any questions, you can reply to the email that you got the link in this, and we can follow up links to the 3D printing site and so forth. So any questions, you can reach us there, and we'll put out a link to the video for this project. So.
How do we attach the propeller?
Okay, that will, you've got your green piece on the front there.
Yeah.
And you see how there's a slot in the bottom of the green piece?
Yeah.
So you'll slide the wire up into that slot until your black barrel is lined up with the front of the hole there. And then you can push the black barrel into the green hole.
Can you see mine? See the slot?
Yeah.
Put the wire hook into that slot.
Okay.
And then the black barrel will slide right in.
And if it's a little tight, it's sandable. So you could make an adjustment if it's too tight.
Bring it upside down, okay?
Right? See that?
All right, and Brian, Coach Brian will stay on, and I've got to cut out, so I apologize for that. I just scheduled too many things today.
Happy
But I
Father's Day.
do
though.
appreciate everybody's time, and we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, we'll get a hold of Paul Voyendoff with Michigan Science Olympiad and see what we can plan. So does anyone want to see cutting and tying a motor? You can see that the kit plans recommended 12 or 13-inch loop of the rubber that came with the airplane. So I have my meter ruler here, although I'm being an old person, I think in inches, so I apologize for that. So I have 27 inches, which is the 13-inch motor times 2, 26 inches, plus an extra inch because a half an inch is going to go into the knot. And I'm going to tie so that I have ends left over. So I'm going to trim ends off. So I'm going to cut 27 inches of rubber. And normally what we would do is weigh the rubber and actually calculate the density of the rubber. This is 0.75 inch rubber, but the correct way to think about rubber is by grams per inch or grams per centimeter or meter density. And then I'm going to put 2 black rubber O-rings on the motor. You can see black rubber O-rings. These don't come in the kit, but you can get them at Indoor Model Specialties or Freedom Flight kits and a variety of other indoor flying services. So I have 2 O-rings on the loop now. And here are the 2 ends. So I'm going to lubricate the knot area in order to tie the knot. Lubricate so that as I'm pulling tension, so lubricant, Armor All protectant, You can also use silicone shock oil for radio control cars. And I have a Ziploc bag. I'm going to put about 4 or 5 squirts in here so that I can get lubricant on the ends of the motor. So I've got the 2 ends even, and then I'm putting it in the bag, getting it like about a 2-inch area at the end of the motor, pretty well covered. And now I'm going to tie an overhand knot. So this will be a little bit tricky to see, but it's just a overhand knot. Overhand knot, there's like an inch of hanging off there. The knot's not particularly tight. Might pull it just a little tighter. Now I'm going to pull on the loop ends of the rubber, and the knot will travel towards the end of the motor until I have just a little stub of 2/4 inch pieces and the knot. And then a trick that I use, because you want to pull this knot really tight. It's kind of hard to hold on to lubricated rubber, so I'll take a paper towel and grip the rubber. And then I'm going to pull it and hold it. I usually pull and hold for about 20 seconds. So then the knot is nice and tight and tiny. So I'm going to lubricate the rubber again. So I have a single knot, single overhead knot, little tabs about 1/4 inch each. And I'm going to lubricate a couple inches of the rubber at the end there again. So real shiny with lubricant. And I'm going to tie another overhand knot below the first one. So there is a knot below the knot. And I'm going to pull that moderately tight, not super tight. And I'm going to grab the loop end of the rubber, and I'm going to pull on it, and this knot will travel up to the other knot. So the first knot acts as a stopper for the second knot. So now I have 2 overhand knots, one butted up against the other. And I'm going to pull them both tight at the same time, again for 20 seconds, holding the ends with a paper towel because it's slippery.
Can you show us how to do the knot again?
Say that one more time, sorry.
Can you show us how to do the knots again?
Sure. So now I'm going to pull the loop end for about 15 seconds. And then I'm going to trim the ends off. And then if you have any concern about your knot tying ability, the last step you can do is you have, trying to make sure this shows well on the camera, you have little tiny ends there. You can take your glue tool and put 1 drop of super glue right in the little V of the 2 ends. And then you'll have a loop of rubber that won't come apart. Okay, want to see the knot one more time? Actually, the easiest way to see that might be when we distribute the video. But would it help if I did it? Was it the camera angles that you couldn't quite see what I was doing? Because I can use a thicker piece of rubber and then it's easier to see. Do you want me to do it one more time?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
You want me to tie the motor one more time? I can use a thicker piece of rubber so it's easier to see.
Yes, please.
Okay, hang on one second while I go to the giant storehouse of rubber band that I have in my basement.
Thank you.
So because I coach 4 high school teams, we buy our rubber band by the pound. And we generally go through 1.5 pounds of rubber band every season because we probably complete close to 800 test flights between the 4 schools. And then something else we'll show at the Nationals will be custom cutting with a slitter of the rubber to specific densities, which you need a tool for. All right, I have a piece of thicker rubber band cut. Just put the box aside. Okay. So there's some thicker rubber band. Can you see that pretty well?
Yeah.
So you can see I've got about 2 inches of rubber band sitting there. Here's the loop. 2 inches of the end hanging off. And I'm going to put it in the baggie full of lubricant. And I'm going to massage the lubricant all over that 2 inches. Okay.
Oh, we don't have lubricant, so can we use Vaseline or?
No, I wouldn't use Vaseline. I would just, you can buy this. Armor All Protectant is an automotive product, and you can buy it at Target. So Armor All, it says original protectant. It's sprayed on vinyl to make vinyl look shiny inside a car or on the tires of a car. Definitely get this. Don't try to use a substitute. Silicone shock oil you can also use. It's quite a bit more expensive. Armor All works well. You can tie a knot without lubricant, a different kind of knot. In the old days, we used to lubricate the rubber with spit. But it doesn't work that well. You stick it in your mouth and get it lubricated, and that's your rubber band forever. It doesn't work as well, and when you tie the knot that way, it tends to get abraded slightly, and then the motor breaks near the knot when you're trying to wind it really hard. So anyhow, this is lubricated. Then you can see I'm sliding my fingers up a little bit past the edge of the lubricated point. Overhand knot, just the beginning of a granny knot. And then I pull it medium tight, not super tight. So it's just a plain old loop it over once knot. And then I'm pulling on the loop end to make the knot, because it's all, the lubricant has made the rubber slippery. When I pull, the knot will travel. It will slide until it's close to the, so now you can see instead of 2-inch ends, I have little 1/4-inch ends. So now I'm going to pull that knot really tight. So I'm holding the ends with a paper towel. See the knot? Getting a bunch of fingers around it because it's slippery, and pulling it really tight for about 20 seconds. The number of seconds is kind of important because it's kind of squeezing the lubricant out of the knot. So it takes 10, 15, 20 seconds to do this effectively. All right, so that's your single overhand knot. Now I'm going to lubricate again. So I have about 2 inches of rubber band here. There's your loop. 2 inches of rubber band. Here's my overhand knot. And I'm going to lubricate again because I'm going to tie a second knot above the first knot. So there's first knot, overhand knot, overhand knot, right? And I'm going to pull it medium tight, not super tight. So now you have one knot below the other knot, right? One knot below the other knot. Now I'm going to grab the loop end like that, and I'm going to pull, and the lower knot gets pulled up against the upper knot. Because I'm watching my camera, it didn't pull real smoothly. If you end up with one strand kind of bulging out inside this knot, you can pull on the strands individually a little bit to try to make the knot prettier. They work fine whether they're pretty or not. Then I will grab the two ends again with a paper towel, two ends, and I'm going to pull both of those knots really tight for 20 seconds. And then I'm going to pull from the loop end loop end for about 15 seconds, just to jam that lower knot up against the upper knot a little bit more. And then trim the ends off. There is a way to do this with hemostats, holding the rubber so you can tie to exact weight. So you have no ends to cut off. The hemostat would be grabbing the end and you do all the tying. So Chuck has a video, Coach Chuck has a video of how to tie with hemostats. And we'll get that to Paul Voyendoff along with the video of this build session. And you can see knot tying with hemostats to specific weight. So with nothing to cut off, if you have a 2.0 gram motor required for a particular year of right stuff, you can cut 1.99 grams of rubber, grip the end with hemostats, tie the knot, pull it tight, and you still have 1.99 grams, nothing to cut off. So you're not guessing your weight. So anyhow, that's the knot. And then you can put a drop of super glue on the two loose ends between them if you want to have a little extra security of the knot not coming out. So I think that's everything unless people have questions. Somebody has a note here, a bit unrelated. Do you know if Science Olympiad will be online or real life for 2021? So far, the Science Olympiad National Tournament in California has been declared to be virtual. I hear talk of states and invitationals possibly being in person. Of course, this is all dependent on how the virus and the pandemic goes. So I follow it pretty closely with the releases from the Michigan governor's website. And things are going pretty well, so that I'd say maybe it's possible we'll have some in-person tournaments. Hard to say. Let's see, are there any more questions in the chat? No? Anybody else have anything else? You've got me now. I'm trapped. You can ask me absolutely 100% anything.
Will there be a workshop for glider as well?
Workshop
Sorry, no, not glider, the electric ride stuff.
Electric ride stuff, yes, we will prepare something. We have, with the National Free Flight Society, a YouTube channel. We're also coordinating with the national office people at Science Olympiad to generate videos that will link to their site. So you can keep an eye on, we'll send a link to the YouTube channel along with this video and along with other things. Yes.
So today's workshop was very helpful, especially for newbies.
Yeah, it was fun for me too. I love building airplanes with people. So hopefully a number of you can come to the nationals and you can fly them at the soccer complex, which has a 65-foot ceiling and it's 300 feet by 200 feet in floor space. So it's a lot of fun to fly at.
Yeah, so we are registered, we'll be coming.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So we'll see you there. If you don't have a big building like that to fly in, you're flying in a gym. I wrote an article in this month's National Free Flight Society Digest, which if you join National Free Flight Society, you can get a copy of the digest. I think I can distribute that article too, though. Maybe I can send it to Paul, to Mr. Voyendoff. That describes the way that we wind rubber bands to get a maximum number of turns into the motor. And also to do a sequence of test flights that don't end up in the girders, but fly, gradually closer and closer to the girders for super long flights. I described that in its, almost the entire process we do is in an article I wrote this month. Anything else? Anybody else?
So I have a question. We have our rubber band. So now how would we attach this to the motor?
So the rubber motor, in my case, I put these two black O-rings on the motor. So the kit didn't come with the O-rings. You don't really need them. So once you've tied a loop, so there's a loop of rubber band with the knot tied at one end. ideally, you would wind this motor with one end of it hooked to a torque measuring device called a torque meter, and the other end with a mechanical winder. And you'd stretch the rubber band to between 3 and 6 times its static length. And there's a whole process for winding a lot of turns into it. So you wind it on a separate device, a torque meter, and then you transfer it from the torque meter to the airplane. Now, a simpler way to do it, if you don't have all that equipment, is you would attach the, let's see if I can get this on camera. You would attach the rubber band to the propeller hook, like that. The motor should be completely lubricated. You'd put it in that plastic bag, massage the Armor All lubricant thoroughly into the rubber band, and then maybe put it on a paper towel and pat it a couple times because it doesn't need to be dripping wet. And then I have the rubber motor hooked on the front hook by the propeller. And then what you can do is you can then stretch the rubber band out and have a partner hold the propeller. This is hard to show on this video. Have a partner hold the propeller like that. And the hook. You can hook the other end of the rubber band to a winder and wind in lots and lots of turns. And when you think you have the right number of turns, which is in my article, then you would detach the motor from the torque meter and you would hook it onto the rear hook like that. So right now the motor is loose, but after you put 1,500 turns into the rubber band, which I'm guessing that should be pretty logical in this 13-inch motor, maybe even 2,000 turns, the motor will be tight between the two hooks. There's more to winding than that, because if you just launched it like that, it probably will fly, if it's trimmed well, 100 feet high. So you want to maybe in a gym with a 24-foot ceiling to only fly 24 feet. There is a lot more to it than that to get the winding done correctly to fly to the height that you want to fly. That would be like another half an hour to explain. So I'm going to send the article and that'll be distributed with this video.
So that rear hook came with the package?
Oh yes, it was part of the it was part of this same little group of parts that had the two Y-shaped pieces that joined the two wing halves.
Oh, like that?
Do you see it? It doesn't look like anything. So can you see it on my airplane though? There's the rear hook. Sorry, I didn't realize your question was that. There's the rear hook. And it just glues to the side of the fuselage, like that. Now, if somehow it got lost, you can make a rear hook out of a piece of wire. It just has to be something hook-shaped, and then the wire would have an end on it that would poke into the wood. You could literally bend one out of a paper clip that looks like that. 20 thousandths wire would be better, but paper clip would work. So any other questions? How long do you think this airplane will fly with a good wind on it? I'm thinking 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes at a 65-foot ceiling, probably 2 minutes. So if there aren't any other questions, I'm thinking I'll sign off and I will distribute the video and the article I was talking about and the YouTube channel link. And I'll try to think of anything else that might be helpful to the Science Olympiad president, Mr. Paul Boyendoff, and he has your email contacts, I believe, because he got the kits to you, and he will forward all the information on to you. So I think we're all done. It was a lot of fun. congratulations on the build or following along, and hopefully to finish your build soon. So last call for questions.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was lots of fun. So we'll see you, those of you at Nationals, and if I don't see you at Nationals, I'll see you at States at Michigan every year, hopefully, right?
Yeah. Thank you
All right.
so much. It was really helpful.
That's good. It was fun. Yeah, they're a great little airplane considering how easy they are to build. Okay, I'm going to sign off. We'll see all of you at some point in the future. Bye-bye.
Very good job.
Yeah, you're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.